So hello everybody, this is Bante Joe again, and I'm just here at Petticoat Creek Conservation Area, and Lake Ontario is right near me, and thought to record a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. So thought that could start with just a little meditation, so can lean forward a bit and arch your spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And when watching the breath at the tip of the nose, it can be good to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. Being aware all the way through the in-breath, as the in-breath turns to the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath, and as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open our eyes and do a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So I hope that everybody's keeping well wherever might be. And I was asked a question a couple weeks ago about kamma. And so I had given a talk, and one of the themes in the talk was that sometimes kamma can ripen in a test. And so the question was, from what I understood from your talk, you're saying that kamma can ripen in tests sometimes. And could you please explain? So thought to use that question as the topic for today's Dhamma discussion. So kamma can ripen in many different ways, and it's so complicated that it said that basically only a Buddha can really figure out all the very specific ins and outs of kamma. But there are certain themes in kamma that the rest of us can figure out, and that can help a person in their practice, kind of know, one can try to get a sense of why is this coming up, what did I do, and what does it mean. So one of the things is that as one goes along practicing, then one is generating a particular type of kamma. To generate this kamma, generally one needs to have an intention in mind. One has to have a goal in mind. So if one has a goal like, I want to become an arahant and under the Buddha Gautama, or I want to become an anagami or sakadagami or sotapanna, basically I want the path that the Buddha described, then if one starts practicing with this intention in mind, then it inclines one's mind in a particular direction. So this inclining of the mind is something that will take one in a particular direction, and obviously the past inclinations of the mind are going to compete with it. One decides that one wants to go forward in one's practice. All of a sudden, the things that one used to do may start to seem more appealing. Kind of the bad things about one's job or about partying or whatever it was one was doing before, those things may fall by the wayside. And the good things or the nice things about them may become more prominent in the mind. So in this way, this type of kamma, one is generating this path where one is putting forth effort, one is trying to develop one's mind in a particular direction, and one may be getting a certain amount of happiness out of one's meditation. But this is competing with the inclinations one had in one's mind before towards worldly things, towards the things that one would grab onto and will make one suffer later. So this kind of competition can result in tests in the mind. In other words, there can be a tipping point where one essentially is generating more kamma on the side of Dhamma than kamma on the side of the world. There's a tipping point where one's life can shift more towards the side of the Dhamma than the side of the world. And it's at these tipping points that a kind of test can occur mentally. Kind of, we say, like mental difficulties can occur, because one feels like one has to choose between this uncertain path going forward and another path looking backwards that one might think, oh, that wasn't so bad. And one going forwards looks like it has all kinds of difficulties in front of it and an uncertain end. So this is a kind of mental test that one goes through in larger and smaller ways. The smaller ways can lead to larger ones. The larger ones can occur when actually one's life starts to shift in a direction that one feels like, well, if I keep making changes in this direction, then what I used to do, what I used to have, I won't be able to keep it anymore. So that's a larger test. The other way that kamma can result in tests is that not only does kamma ripen like internally in a person's mind, it's a very mysterious force in that kamma also has an effect on the external world. So it has an effect on the way that things come together, opportunities arise externally. The types of kamma that we make can have an influence on the people that we meet, but even more mysteriously, it has an influence on external conditions. So some monks, when they first ordain, they seem fine, and then all of a sudden they come down with terrible health issues or terrible stomach problems right away when they ordain. And then if they disrobe, they go away. And sometimes people, when they're, there's all these common stories. One wants to ordain, all of a sudden somebody just as an example, proposes marriage, or one gets a scholarship, or something, really good happens at one's job, or something like this. A big temptation that will kind of try to hold one back to the world. So the way mechanically this works can be conceived as being similar to the way that the operation of kamma works in the mind. One is generating this kamma that will lead one in a path towards nibbana, but it's competing with the old kamma one made, the kamma that pulls one towards the world. And so when these things start to pull apart, when these things start to rip apart, there again is a test. There can be a testing point where one feels like, well, this is an uncertain path. I'm going to have to give things up to go along it further. And, well, the things that I had back then weren't so bad. One forgets about all the suffering one had, or one might feel like one has progressed enough that one will no longer have that suffering. But of course, the suffering is inherent in these external things. It's not like there's a very perfect situation in the world where there's no suffering. So in this way, externally as well, these tests can ripen, where the world can pull one's life together in such ways that one is tested. One's commitment to the path one wants to develop is tested. So some of the mechanics behind this are that the Buddha teaches that when one is doing these two types of kamma that can compete, that's one of them. Another one is that the Buddha teaches that when one starts to do good kamma, the old bad kamma that one had in the past ripens quickly. So in other words, when one starts to do good things, one still doesn't have the benefits fully of the good kamma that one's doing. That happens further down the road for a person. But right away, the bad kamma that one did in the past can ripen quickly. Kind of like a person paying off their interest right away, but still not having the full salary. So it's like they have nothing. So this is another way that these things can ripen in tests. All these kind of difficulties can come up, but the happiness that one gets from one's meditation, or the happiness that one gets from one's Buddhist path, is not yet equal to overcome the difficulties. Now, of course, this graphs a different way. If one keeps going on the Buddhist path, that little small happiness can grow larger and larger. And the difficulties that one had from the ripening of kamma, or the competition of kamma, grow smaller and smaller. The way of the world graphs in an opposite direction. If one runs back to worldly things, the happiness that one gets at first seems really large, but then it diminishes and diminishes and diminishes, and one is right back where one started. So it's good to know in almost all religious traditions there's these teachings that people can be tested in their religious path, in their pursuit of a larger truth, of a larger meaning in their life. And so the path of the Dhamma is the same. One can be tested in these ways through competing kamma, through the ripening of different kamma. One can be tested through the competing kamma in one's mind and the competing kamma externally. So what this means is that if one knows this, if one sees this, then one can be prepared. If one knows and sees this, then one can be ready that this will come, or can come, when one starts to practice sincerely. And one can assign the appropriate meaning to these things, knowing that if one continues practicing, the small happinesses will grow larger and these sufferings will grow small. But if one runs back to the way that one did things before, the happiness might seem large at first, but it'll get smaller and smaller, and one will end up where one is before. So for these reasons, it can be good to reflect on the Buddha's teachings on kamma and the way that they may test our resolve, so that we can pass the test and move on in our pursuit of the Dhamma. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice.